He's gonna build me a pretty little house, have a pretty little maid for three. He's done kissed me on the mouth and he's gonna marry me. He's done kissed me on the mouth, so he's gonna marry me. coming, hollow and light. You ask the birds for answer, they'll tell you all that they know. So close your eyes and take your first flight. Little red flying low. Tell me where did my life go? Over yonder in the graveyard, where the wild flowers grow, there they laid my own true lover. She's gone from me forevermore. Fairer than the sweetest flower, restless as the wildest way, poured in with love as deep in ocean. This is the girl that I did win. I left her there back in the mountain to see the world, the riches again. When I returned, no earthly treasure could ease this heart so filled with pain. They saw her high up in the mountain, beneath that little mound of clay, the girl that I returned to marry. So standing now, the flowers in there. I'll go lay it down and wander, lay aside my earthly be someplace that is new. You and me, we're gonna watch the birds fly.
Say to me, I'll sing you to sleep, for life is but a dream. Across the ocean, an old rowboat, there's a man with a fiddle and a lonesome note. He'll take your hat and hang up your coat, and he wants you to stay a while, and he wants to teach you his song. Sing of a girl who has gone away. She ran through the forest crying, oh my Lord, give me an answer or a song or a sword. You gave her all three, oh the rain it poured, and she wants you to stay a while, and she wants to teach you her songs, and she wants to dance till the sun comes up, and she wants to do no wrong. they do, and it sounds alright. They sing of a man and a boat and a tree, and the way that you look lying next to me. I'll sing you to sleep, for life is but a dream. And I want you to stay a while, and I want to teach you my song, and I want to dance till the sun comes up, and I want to do no wrong, and I want to do no bright smile, tall as a sycamore tree. He's real smart with a big, real heart. He's gonna marry me.
He's gonna marry me. We're gonna go to town. We're gonna buy a good real car and we're gonna drive around. We'll hold hands, touch and hug. He talks so sweet to me. He knows a lot about love and stuff, and he's gonna marry me.
His mama don't like me one little bit. You know I don't care. Let her picture hates a fit. I ain't marrying her. He's always been her mama's boy. It's just plain jealousy. She's as mad as an old red hen 'cause he's gonna marry me.
He's gonna marry me. He's gonna buy me a ring. We're gonna be so free. Cut mama's apron strings. He's gonna build me a pretty little house. Have a pretty little built for three. He's done kissed me on the mouth and he's gonna marry me. He's gonna marry me and he's gonna buy me a ring. We're gonna be so free. Cut mama's apron strings. He's gonna build me a pretty little house. Have a pretty little maid for three. He's done kissed me on the mouth and he's gonna marry me. He's done kissed me on the mouth, so he's gonna marry me. Here I am to waste it for the evening ride down to Mother Mary's other place. Can I hang out here beside your fireside? Listen to the rain fall, falling on the earth wall. Don't believe I won't come down before you go. Don't believe that I cannot tell a lie. If you ever think I called your baby mine, maybe in an empty room later in the afternoon. Oh me, what can it be? The cat's not in the cupboard. Oh me, where can she be again? Sun up, the gate's gone up, the town below got flooded. We'll get by with a little bit of luck again. Now I got me gal down here for Thanksgiving dinner, don't you know? Up there she calls me baby mine. She makes me mellow, makes me way down low, singing of a riverbud, playing on a silver tongue. Oh me, what can it be? The cat's not in the cupboard. Oh me, where can she be again? Sun up, the gig's gone up, the town below got flooded. We'll get by with a little bit of luck again.
Hello and welcome to Irvine Berkeley Theater. At this time, please place cell phones and other electronic devices on silent. We remind you that audio and video recording and flash photography are not permitted. Please also take a moment to locate your nearest emergency exit. If you need to leave the theater for any reason, please keep in mind that you may be asked to wait in the lobby until there is a break in the presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Austin Parrish. I'm the Dean and a Chancellor's Professor here at the University of California, Irvine for the School of Law, and it's my absolute pleasure to be able to welcome you. This is the 8th annual Shakespeare Trial, and the law school has been fortunate to be a co-sponsor since the very first trial began in April of 2018, where we did it right here in the Berkeley Theater. Erwin Chemerinsky and then Dean Song Richardson, presided over by Judge Guilford, with a case by a guy named Hamlet. It was a fabulous production. And it was really special for the law school to have our inaugural dean, Erwin Chemerinsky, our second dean, Dean Song Richardson, and one of the founders of the law school in the community, Andy Guilford, preside over it. And it's one of the things I think that I'm particularly proud to be a dean here at the University of California, Irvine, is that we really value these interdisciplinary connections. It's why I love to be able to co-sponsor this amazing event, because it's important that we as lawyers are able to draw inspiration from the arts, and the arts can draw, heaven forbid, inspiration from lawyers. So I'm very grateful to be able to welcome you to this year's New Swan Theater production. It's just been an amazing collaboration, and I'm very proud to sponsor it. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to the amazing co-directors of the New Swan Center, Eli and Julia. Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dean Parrish, and welcome everyone. How are you doing? Are you ready for a trial? We're so excited, and we're always delighted to be here at the Berkeley Theater, which is our partner for New Swan Shakespeare Festival. And we wanted to thank you, first of all, for all of your support. I believe this is the most robust turnout we've had for a trial. So we thank you for being here. We think we're going to have a great event for you. And wanted to let you know that this season's tickets went on sale today. So if you haven't purchased your tickets yet, you're probably going to want to do that. We have a tendency to sell out, as you know. So this year's productions are Much Ado About Nothing, which is set in the Wild, Wild West. We invite you to come as your favorite cow person any night you like. And All's Well That Ends Well, which is a romantic fantasy. And so we're really excited about this summer, and we look forward to welcoming you at the theater. So I'm going to turn this over to Julia now, who's going to give you a little background information on the trial.
Hi, everyone. Okay, well, first of all, thank you, Berkeley team, for all the work you do making this happen. I also want to give a special shout out to our wonderful production coordinator, Jesus Enrique Lopez Vargas. Thank you, Jesus. I also want to acknowledge UCI School of Humanities and the Claire Trevor School of the Arts, plus our 3 participating law schools, UC Irvine Law, UC Berkeley Law, and Stanford Law. So our topic today is Much Ado About Nothing, which is one of Shakespeare's most beloved comedies. It's not a drama in which law appears to play a major role, but the sparring between Beatrice and Benedict does have a kind of Kramer versus Kramer feel to it. A little bit of lawyerliness there. Today in our trial, we're looking at the storyline involving Beatrice's friend Hero and Benedict's friend Claudio. Claudio has just returned from war with a company of other discharged soldiers, including Don Pedro, who is the federal marshal in our production, our Western-themed production. Thrust back into civilian life, Claudio falls in love with young Hero. He is tricked, however, into believing that she has been unfaithful, and he cruelly abandons her at the altar in front of everyone on their wedding day. She collapses, and her mother, Leonata, agrees to publish the death of Hero through a fake burial and various written notices. The goal is to rehabilitate Hero's reputation and reconcile the young lovers.
Sounds like a nice idea. But is it legal? That's what we're going to decide today. And remember, you are the jury, so you have to listen very carefully to the scenes and to the trial and determine guilt or innocence at the end of this. So, a little bit about our production. As I mentioned, this will be set in 1880 in the Wild, Wild West in a little silver mining town called Messina. What you're about to see is the scene at the altar that Julia was just describing. Now, the whole company will be on stage for the wedding, and this is a momentous occasion, but remember that Claudio believes that Hero has been unfaithful to him. Everyone else in attendance is expecting a happy marriage ceremony. So now I'd like to introduce to you our 4 new Swan actors. They are Sonia Cook, who is playing Leonata, and Zach Trent, who's playing Claudio, Alejandra Villanueva, who's the preacher, and Malia Walker, who is playing Hero. Actors, the stage is yours.
Come, good preacher, be brief, and you shall account the particular duties afterwards.
You come hither, my lord, to marry this lady?
No.
To be married to her, preacher. You come to marry her.
Lady, you come hither to be married to this man.
I do.
If either of you know any inward impediment why you should not be conjoined, I charge you on your souls, utter it.
Know you any, Hero?
None, my lord.
Know you any, Claudio?
I dare make his answer. None.
Stand thee by, preacher. Mother, by your leave, will you, with free and unconstrained soul, give me this maid, your daughter?
As freely, son, as God did give her me.
There, Leonata, take her back again. She's but the sign and semblance of her honor. Behold, how like a maid she blushes here. Would you not swear, all you that see her, that she were a maid by these exterior shows? But she is none. She knows the heat of a luxurious bed. Her blush is guiltiness, not modesty.
What do you mean, my lord?
Not to be married, not to knit my soul to an approved wanton.
Dear Claudio, If you, in your own proof, have vanquished the resistance of her youth and made defeat of her virginity...
No, Leonata, I never tempted her with word too large, but as a brother to his sister showed bashful sincerity and comely love.
And seem I ever otherwise to you?
Out on thee. Seeming? You seem to me as Diane in her orb, as chaste as is the bud ere it be blown. But you are more intemperate in your blood than Venus or those pampered animals that rage in savage sensuality.
Is my lord well that he doth speak so wide?
Let me but move one question to your daughter, and by that motherly and kindly power that you have in her, bid her answer truly.
I charge thee, do so, as thou art my child.
Oh God, defend me, how I am beset.
What man was he talked with you yesternight out at your window betwixt 12 and 1? Now, if you are a maid, answer to this.
I talked with no man at that hour.
Why then are you no maiden? Oh, hero. What a hero hadst thou been if half thy outward graces had been placed about thy thoughts and counsels of thy heart. But fare thee well, most foul, most fair. Farewell. For thee I'll lock up all the gates of love.
Hath no man's dagger here a point for me? Doth not every earthly thing cry shame upon her? Could she here deny the story that is printed in her blood? What had I, child? Whatever wast thou lovely in my eyes? If I had taken in a beggar's brat, I might not say, no part of her is mine. This shame derives itself from unknown loins. But mine, and mine I loved, and mine I praised, and mine that I was proud on. Why, you, oh, you have fallen into a pit of ink that the wide sea hath drops too few to wash you clean again.
Hear me a little, for I have been silent so long and given way unto this course of fortune by noting of the accusations. Trust not my readings nor my observations. If this, you lie not guiltless here under some biting error. Lady, what man is he you are accused of?
They know that do accuse me, I know none. Prove you that any man with me conversed at hours unmeet, or that I maintain the change of word with any creature, refuse me, hate me, torture me to death.
There is some strange misunderstanding with the accusers. Pause a while. Let my counsel sway you in this case. Here, you have been left for dead. Let you a while be secretly kept, and we shall publish you are dead indeed.
What shall become of this?
You dying, as it must be so maintained, upon the instant you were accused, shall be lamented, pitied, and excused of every hearer. So will it fare with Claudio. When he shall hear you died upon his words, oh, the idea of your life shall sweetly creep into his study of imagination, and every lovely organ of your life shall come apparelled with more precious habit than when you lived indeed. Then shall he mourn, and wish he had not so accused you.
Being that I flow in grief, the slightest rain may lead me.
'Tis well consented. Presently away, come, lady, die to live. This wedding day perhaps is but prolonged. Have patience and endure.
Did we tell you it was a comedy? But the brilliance of Shakespeare, he always has the play bouncing back and forth. Okay, this next scene is at the graveyard. Claudio believes that Hero has died because that's what he's been told, and that he is visiting her tomb. He reads an epitaph, what we might now call an obituary. He has arranged to have music sung at her grave, and in our production, Hero will appear as a ghost-like vision.
This is the graveyard of Leonata's family. Done to death by slanderous tongues was the hero that here lies. Death in payment for her wrongs gives her fame, which never dies. So the life that died with shame lives in death with glorious fame. Now, music, sound, and sing your solemn hymn.
I do not fear more the lightning flash. I fear not slander, nor I fear censor rash. All lovers young, all lovers must consign to death and come to dust. No slanderous tongue may harm me, no, nor witchcraft can charm me. Ghost unlaid forbear thee, nothing ill come near thee. All lovers young, all lovers must consign to death and come to dust. No slanderous tongue can harm me, nor no witchcraft can charm me. All lovers young, all lovers must consign to death and come to dust.
Now, unto thy bones good night. Yearly will I do this right.
Oh man, we can't wait to get started on rehearsals. I want to say thank you to our actors, and now, oh, okay. They are raring to go. I mean, like, we rehearsed these for about 3 hours today, so we're ready to get into rehearsal for the summer. And first, we're going to have our trial. So it is our great pleasure to introduce to you the legal team. For the defense, we are welcoming Erwin Chemerinsky back to UC Irvine. We know that Erwin isn't at UC Irvine anymore, but we also know that UC Irvine has the best law program in the country. Erwin is the 17th Dean and Jesse H. Choper Distinguished Professor of Law at Berkeley Law. Prior to assuming this position from 2008 to 2017, he was the founding Dean and Distinguished Professor of Law and Raymond Pike Professor of First Amendment Law at the University of California, Irvine School of Law. Erwin Chemerinsky.
And for the prosecution, please welcome back Bernadette Meyler. Bernie is Carl and Sheila Spaeth Professor of Law at Stanford University. She received her PhD in English here at UC Irvine in 2006, and I was honored to chair her dissertation, now a book, on 17th century drama and the law. She is a 2020 Guggenheim Fellow in Constitutional Studies and my thought partner on this trial.
And finally, we'd like to welcome Honorable Andrew Guilford as our judge. Woo! Andy is a former United States District Judge for the Central District of California, where he has heard over 100 trials. He is a founder of the UC Irvine School of Law and now serves as a mediator and arbitrator for Judicate West. Honorable Andrew Guilford.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for those kind words, and welcome to you all. It's such a pleasure to see you all here, and you are our jury. One of the things that makes this wonderful event unique is that you get to act as the jury, you in the room here and those watching through the video. As a jury, you will be asked to determine the ultimate question of guilt or innocence, so please listen carefully to what goes on here. You know, tonight really is much ado about something. With apologies to Shakespeare, you just saw some great actors, and they will be performing this summer. I want to see how this thing ends. I think I have a hint on how it ends, but I want to see how they perform it and what happens between these couples and the other great couples in this wonderful play. I have found that the new Swan productions are absolutely outstanding. My wife Lorene and I can think of no better way to spend a summer evening than watching these fine actors on this campus over at UCI perform outdoors under the stars. So I encourage you on this, the first day to get tickets, to rush out and get your tickets. So beyond those actors, we have some truly outstanding lawyers here who will be plying their trade in this interesting case. And so we begin. This case of Leonata Swan, United States versus Leonata Swan, is now in session. We will begin with the prosecution. Ms. Meyler, are you ready to proceed?
Absolutely.
Please do so, and you will have 15 to 18 minutes. I will give you a warning at 3 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this trial is about a scourge of our time, the scourge of fake news. Everywhere we turn, conspiracy theorists are feeding us misinformation. AI-generated content is making us question what is true or false, and corporate and political leaders are sending us down rabbit holes. In many of these cases, there's nothing we can legally do about these deceptions because they are protected by the First Amendment of the US Constitution, which prevents us from abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. But the First Amendment isn't absolute. When someone makes a false statement to a US government official, that violates federal law. Specifically, it violates 18 U.S.C. section 1001, which is at issue in this case. The moment that Leonata set about persuading Don Pedro, the federal authority within this Western region, that her daughter Hero had died instead of simply fainting, as you saw, at the shock of Claudio's false accusation, Hero and Leonata violated federal law. Leonata violated federal law, as I want to demonstrate in the next few minutes. The relevant statute here is clear. This is 18 U.S.C. section 1001. The law specifies that whoever, in any matter within the jurisdiction of the executive, legislative, or judicial branch of the government of the United States, knowingly and willfully makes any materially false, fictitious, or fraudulent statement or representation shall be fined under this title and imprisoned not more than 5 years. I will prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that Leonata's duplicitous claim about Hero's death satisfies each element of the crime. I will show that Leonata first made a statement. Second, that that statement was false, fictitious, or fraudulent. Third, that she made the statement within the jurisdiction of the US government. Fourth, that she intentionally made the statement knowing that it was false. And fifth, that the statement was material. As you know, and as you just witnessed, at the anticipated happy event of Hero's wedding to Claudio, Claudio raised an obstacle to consummation of his marriage by claiming that Hero had entertained another man at her room the prior evening. Although Hero denied this slanderous falsehood, Claudio persisted in his mistaken belief and proceeded to malign her, upon which Hero fainted. Afterwards, the preacher here, who had believed in Hero's fidelity all along, suggested that Leonata pretend Hero had actually died rather than passing out, on the theory that her supposed death would make Claudio regret what he had done and allow for some time to figure out what was really going on and to fix the situation. So, as you heard the preacher suggest, pause a while and let my counsel sway you in this case. Your daughter here, the princess, left for dead. Let her a while be secretly kept in and publish it that she is dead indeed. Maintain a mourning ostentation, and on your family's old monument hang mournful epitaphs, and do all the rites that appertain unto burial. But Leonata didn't question this highly questionable scheme. Instead, she went about implementing it immediately. And in very short order, she reported to Don Pedro, the local authority, as well as to Claudio, that I say, thou hast belied mine innocent child. Thy slander hath gone through and through her heart, and she lies buried with her ancestors. Oh, in a tomb where never scandal slept, save this of hers, framed by thy villainy. So this was Leonata's response to what the preacher suggested. And as you saw, as a result, Claudio was fully deceived and, in fact, went to hang his own epitaph on Hero's grave. Now, this fulfills the first statutory element of violating 18 U.S.C. 1001, that Leonata made a statement. Furthermore, the same evidence and more supports the second element beyond a reasonable doubt, that the statement was false, fictitious, or fraudulent. Hero simply fainted and never died, as we know. She was, in fact, later resurrected before everyone else in the guise of her cousin, once Leonata persuaded a repentant Claudio to take that woman as his bride instead. At that moment, when Don Pedro exclaims, the former hero that is dead, Leonata confesses that she died, my lord, but whiles her slanders lived. So Leonata, in fact, confessed, in other words, that Hero was never dead all along, and that she was only pretending that she was dead while she had been defamed. The whole time that Leonata's conspiracy was unfolding, Hero was alive and well. I'll return shortly to the third element of the offense, but I will now establish that Leonata intentionally made the statement knowing that it was false. As her colloquy with the preacher demonstrates, he and Leonata criminally conspire to conceal Hero from view and falsely maintain her death while knowing that they were putting forth fake news. They also knew that this misinformation could lead to dire consequences. Leonata hence promulgated the falsehood that Hero was dead without compunction and with specific knowledge that her statement was untrue. I want to dwell a little bit more now, though, on the third element, that Leonata made the statement within the jurisdiction of the federal government. As you know, Don Pedro represents the authority of the federal government in this frontier territory. A false statement to him, such as Leonata performed, is therefore a statement within the jurisdiction of the federal government. Now, esteemed counsel for the defense here may attempt to persuade you to think of this requirement narrowly and insist that an investigation to insist that an investigation must have already begun into the case of Hero's death before Don Pedro can be thought of as having jurisdiction. But our Supreme Court has rejected that narrow interpretation of the statutory language in the case of United States against Rogers. In that instance, Mr. Rogers had called an FBI field office claiming that his wife had been kidnapped. In fact, as he knew, she had merely run away with a paramour. At Mr. Rogers' subsequent trial, he tried to argue that his falsehood could not be criminally punished under Section 1001 because it had not been made within the jurisdiction of the federal government. The Supreme Court determined otherwise. Chief Justice Rehnquist, writing for a unanimous court, maintained that, as in all the Supreme Court's prior cases involving the same statutory language, the term jurisdiction should be interpreted under its ordinary meaning and not given a narrow or technical interpretation for purposes of Section 1001. What Justice Rehnquist said bears a bit of elaboration. He explained that the most natural, non-technical reading of the statutory language is that it covers all matters confided to the authority of an agency or department. He cited Webster's dictionary to broadly define jurisdiction as, among other things, the limits or territory within which any particular power may be exercised, a sphere or authority. A department has jurisdiction in the sense when it has the power to exercise authority in a particular situation. In the case of Hero's putative death, Don Pedro and the U.S. authorities would have had power to investigate the circumstances leading to her supposed untimely demise, as well as whether any foul play might have been involved. Leonata made her egregiously false claim about Hero's death to precisely the person who would have held the federal authority to investigate her demise. Hence, the statement was well within the jurisdiction of the federal government, just as Mr. Rogers' lie about his wife had been. Like Mr. Rogers, Leonata could have set in motion a chain of events and a vast expenditure of scarce federal resources through her false statement. This brings me to the final element of Leonata's crime, that her statement was material. What does it mean for her statement to be material? As the Supreme Court has also determined, a statement is material if it has a natural tendency of influencing or is capable of influencing the decision of the decision-making body to which it was addressed. Here, Leonata's claim to Don Pedro and Claudio about Hero's death would naturally lead them to act on such information. In fact, Claudio agrees to marry someone else, Hero's purported cousin, on the basis of this falsehood. And as I mentioned earlier, Don Pedro could have initiated an investigation into the factors leading to her death and whether anyone had committed some act of criminal negligence or manslaughter. Furthermore, all the evidence suggests that Leonata's false statement was of the utmost materiality in another respect. Because the news of Hero's death threw her friend Beatrice into despair, Beatrice proceeded to extract a promise from Benedict that he would challenge Claudio to a duel. Heretofore fast friends and comrades, Benedict and Claudio would have been parted forever by the death of one of them had the duel come to fruition, which it almost did. Indeed, Benedict was so intent on pursuing this outcome after his commitment to Beatrice that he challenged Claudio in full view of Don Pedro, whispering in Claudio's ear, even though he knew that a proposed duel would be illegal. Even Leonata herself, regardless of her infirmities as a potential swordsman, suggested the possibility of dueling with Claudio to avenge her child. So here, tragedy was averted, as we heard earlier, by pure happenstance of timing and the discovery of the initial deception about Hero's infidelity to Don Pedro and Claudio. But that has nothing to do with whether or not Leonata's falsehood was material. With full intent to mislead, the defendant made a material false statement to Don Pedro, the emissary of the federal government here, and the dire consequences of this fake news were only narrowly averted. Leonata's anger about how Claudio had shamed her child and her family are no excuse for making false representations to the federal government and potentially imperiling countless others. No matter what Leonata thought she would accomplish through her lies, they have violated the law. We may not be able to rid our country of the plague of fake news, but we can at least send the message that no one who lies to the federal government can escape unpunished. In addition, the evidence supports the fact that Leonata is guilty of violating 18 U.S.C. Section 1001 beyond a reasonable doubt. She made a statement, it was false, it was in the federal jurisdiction, it was intentional, and it was a material statement. For all of these reasons, I urge you to convict Leonata. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Mr. Chemerinsky, is the defense ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
15 to 18 minutes, please.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Judge Guilford, esteemed opposing counsel, it's wonderful to be in this court again and great to be home at UC Irvine. I have listened carefully to the prosecutor, as I'm sure you have, and there's only one way to describe the case against my client, Leonata. It is truly much ado about nothing. One of the great things about this trial is you all get to participate as the jury. So I'd like to ask you all a question. Have you ever told a lie? Has your loved one partner ever come home with a new pair of jeans and said, "Honey, do these jeans make me look fat?" And you know there's only one answer to that question. Have you ever gone to a truly dreadful dinner party where the food is awful? I mean, so bad you got to go to McDonald's on the way home, but still you leave and say, "Thank you for the delightful evening and the delicious food." So let me ask you for a show of hands, how many in this room has ever told a lie? Okay, I see a few of you not raising your hands. You're lying. I want to reassure you that your lies, in all likelihood, didn't violate a federal law. Only under very limited circumstances is lying a crime, such as if you lie to a federal officer as part of an investigation. But that's not the facts of this case, so the only verdict is not guilty. In fact, I'm going to give you 3 separate reasons why you need to vote not guilty. First, the federal statute involved here doesn't apply at all. Second, if it does apply, its requirements are not met. And third, even if it applied and its requirements are met, the speech is protected by the First Amendment and would violate the Constitution to convict my client. Let me start then with the first argument, that the statute doesn't apply. Like the prosecutor, I will begin by reading you the statute, but I want to emphasize some words that the prosecutor just slid over. The statute, 18 United States Code 1001 says, "Except as otherwise provided in this section, whoever any matter within the jurisdiction of the executive, legislative, or judicial branch of the government of the United States knowingly, willfully makes any materially false, fictitious, or fraudulent statement." I want to emphasize those words, executive, legislative, or judicial branch. So because what's involved here is the claim that my client, Leonata, lied to Don Pedro. Well, let's focus on who's Don Pedro and also on who my client is. Don Pedro came from Aragon in Spain and was coming to visit after a battle. Came to Messina in Sicily. What's the indication that Don Pedro had any executive, legislative, or judicial authority at all? The most that you have in the play is that he's called a prince. But the fact that he's called a prince doesn't mean that he has executive, legislative, or judicial authority. Think, for example, of Prince Harry or Prince William. Neither of them has executive, legislative, or judicial authority. Neither of them has any authority at all. So what is the indication that Don Pedro has executive, legislative, or judicial authority? I have a challenge to my esteemed opposing counsel. For this trial, like all trials, there is a record. For this trial, the record is this, the play, Much Ado About Nothing. I've studied it carefully. I can't find a word in this play that Don Pedro exercised ever executive, legislative, or judicial authority. So I will present it to my opposing counsel and say, when you come back up here, point to the jury where it says Don Pedro had any authority at all other than the title Prince. That should end the case. The vote has to be not guilty. But I make a second argument for you, that even if the statute applied, its requirements are not met. And Professor Meyler went through the elements, and she went through them thoroughly, but I want to focus on one of the elements. Remember, in order to find my client guilty, you have to find beyond a reasonable doubt that each of these elements is met. I don't need to go through all of them. I want to focus on one of them, and that's materiality. A lie isn't enough to violate the federal statute. The lie has to be material. And again, I'm going to quote you the same language, or very similar to it, from the Supreme Court, defining what's materiality. And I quote, "A statement is material if it either, one, actually influences, or two, has a natural tendency or capacity to influence a decision of the party to which it was addressed." I intentionally stress those words, a decision of the party to which it was addressed. The United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit, which covers us here in the West Coast, and United States versus Mitchell said, "A false statement is material within the meaning of Section 1001 when it's capable of having some non-trivial effect on the decision of a federal agency." So the question here is, did Don Pedro play any decision-making role whatsoever? Let me explain why this matters so much. This afternoon, I flew from Oakland to Orange County. And imagine I was talking to the person sitting next to me, and imagine I told a lie. And imagine that person happened to work for the federal government. Would I have then committed a federal crime just because I told a lie to somebody who worked for the federal government? Thankfully, no. Only if the person was conducting an investigation and then I lied would I be committing a crime. Only if the person had some decision-making authority and I lied would I be committing a crime. So again, I have a challenge, Professor Meyler. Take that record I gave you and show me any indication that Don Pedro had any law enforcement decision-making authority. If not, he was just a friend who was there who happened to be a prince in Spain. That doesn't make it material. That doesn't make it a crime. But even if I'm wrong in my first two arguments, even if somehow the statute applies here, and even if somehow the statute has been violated, the speech should be deemed protected by the First Amendment. And of course, you can't convict somebody if it would violate the Constitution of the United States. The United States Supreme Court has been clear that generally, even false speech is protected under the Constitution. New York Times versus Sullivan is one of the most important Supreme Court cases with regard to the First Amendment. It came down in 1964. It's the case where the Supreme Court said that the First Amendment protects criticism of government and government officials, even if it's caustic and vituperative. The day after New York Times versus Sullivan came down, Harry Calvin, a professor at the University of Chicago Law School, said, "This is an occasion for dancing in the streets." In a New York Times versus Sullivan, the Supreme Court, in an opinion by Justice William Brennan, said, quote, "False statement is inevitable in free debate, and it must be protected if the freedoms of expression are to the breathing space they need to survive." Professor Meyler wanted to tell you about a case. I'll also tell you one. A case called United States versus Alvarez from a decade ago. United States versus Alvarez involved federal statute, like the federal statute you have now, but it was called the Stolen Valor Act. It made it a federal crime for someone to lie about having received a Medal of Honor or other military decoration. And Javier Alvarez went to a water commission board in Southern California, and he lied and said he'd gotten the Medal of Honor. Well, in fact, Justice Kennedy referred to him in the opinion as a habitual liar. He never got the Medal of Honor. His lie was much ado about nothing, but the United States government prosecuted him nonetheless. And the Supreme Court overturned the conviction. And the Supreme Court made it clear that false speech is generally protected by the Constitution. To quote from the Supreme Court, it said, "There is no general exception to the First Amendment for false statements. This comports with the common understanding that some false statements are inevitable if there's to be an open and vigorous expression of views in public and private conversation, expression the First Amendment seeks to guarantee." That doesn't mean that every false statement is protected. Obviously, there are circumstances where false statements can be punished. But what you have to ask yourself here is this a false statement that should be punished? Or is this a false statement that you deem protected by the First Amendment? Let's stop and pause and focus on the incredible sexism of this play. Why was it that Hero was left at the altar? Because there had been a false rumor that she wasn't a virgin. And so, how did they correct the false rumor? How did they restore her honor? By engaging in the lie that she had died until she came back to the altar and her reputation was restored. In these circumstances, the lie was justified. It served a much greater good. It caused a happy ending to the play. They got married, and so far as we know, they did live happily ever after. Moral philosophers tell us that there are circumstances where lies are justified, and this is one of them. And remember, when I asked you, have you lied? Almost everyone in this room said, yes, it's sometimes you had, because you know that sometimes lies are morally justified. And in those circumstances, as the Supreme Court says in New York Times versus Sullivan, and United States versus Alvarez, it's speech protected by the First Amendment. And so, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I tell you that the statute doesn't apply here. Even if it did, it hasn't been violated. And even if it violated, you should find this as speech protected by the First Amendment. For any and all of these reasons, the verdict in this case must be not guilty.
Ms. Meyler, rebuttal, please.
I'm delighted to accept the invitation of my esteemed opposing counsel to find textual support for the executive authority that Don Pedro wields in this play. Don Pedro, as we know, princes, may be figureheads, they may not be. Don Pedro has just come back from waging war on a joint behalf of his own troops and Messina. And so he's already demonstrated to be serving some of the important executive powers that we currently attribute to the president. Now, one other aspect of the text that suggests that he is someone who's kind of a federal authority over Messina is when Leonata says, if you swear, my lord, and this is speaking to Don John, or Don Pedro, then to Don John, if you swear, my lord, you shall not be forsworn. And then to John, who's Don Pedro's brother, let me bid you welcome, my lord. Being reconciled to the prince, your brother, I owe you all duty. So Leonata owes duty to Don Pedro, who is a superior authority over Messina. Now, returning to the idea that the lie must be material, I couldn't agree more that the lie must be material in order to be prosecuted under this statute. But where I disagree is that this isn't a material lie. So the Rogers case demonstrates that a prosecution need not have already been initiated in order for the lie to be material or the false statement to be material. In Rogers' case, he called the authorities and reported that his wife had been kidnapped and that she was involved in some conspiracies, and that initiated an investigation. So just in the same way, Leonata's claim in front of Don Pedro and Claudio and claim to Don Pedro and Claudio that Hero was dead could have initiated an investigation and was also designed to initiate some violence through the various duels that were proposed in the play. Now, we come to the question of whether this is protected by the First Amendment. And as I mentioned, we can't prosecute most fake news. Most fake news isn't susceptible to prosecution because of the First Amendment. So there are very few kinds of statements and false statements that actually fall within the territory of something that can be criminally punished. This is one of them. So the false statement to a federal authority within the jurisdiction of a federal authority is one of the kinds of statements that actually is an exception to the First Amendment. Or it's contemplated under exceptions to the First Amendment. So why is this a problem? Well, because it's not just saying something bad about federal officials, right? So what could Leonata have done otherwise? She could have said to Don Pedro and Claudio's face all sorts of curses to them, all sorts of terrible words. She could have said false things about them to other people. That would all have been permissible under the First Amendment. So she could have slandered Don Pedro and Claudio herself, and we wouldn't have this case. But what she did is to speak a falsehood to a federal officer and then allow for that federal officer to continue under the misapprehension so that he could proceed in a way that might use substantial federal resources in investigating a possible crime, investigating what had happened, if he had found out the chain of events leading to Hero's death, he could have arrested someone for negligent homicide or manslaughter potentially. So he was potentially led down the path of a wasteful and indiscriminate use of federal resources. So that's why this is a crime, and that's why the statement that Leonata made was material. Now, distinguished defense counsel suggested that moral philosophers tell us we can sometimes lie, that the pragmatic justification for lying is such that we should be able to lie in certain circumstances. Yes, some moral philosophers will say that, but I think even looking at the pragmatic consequences, we can have a counterexample. So Immanuel Kant in the Metaphysics of Morals says that has a hypothetical about a murderer. And he says, well, what if someone comes to the door and says, I'm running from a murderer, can you hide me and don't tell them that I'm inside? And the person says, okay, I'll hide you. I won't tell them that you're inside. And then the murderer comes to the door and the person says, oh, no, they're not inside, and then the murderer goes away. But
2 minutes, counsel.
What if he says, then the person had jumped out the window, and then the murderer sees them having jumped out the window, and that, so pragmatically, a lie may not actually have the result that one wished, and may have the opposite result. And in this very case, we see that Leonata could have caused the death of all of the other protagonists, or many of the other protagonists, simply through her falsehood. Thank you very much.
Thank you, counsel. Mr. Chemerinsky, 5 to 7 minutes in rebuttal.
Thank you, Judge Guilford. Lawyers are confined to the record of their case. That's been painful for me in some of the cases that I've lost, but it is the reality. And therefore, in this case, the record you have is the play. And here the question you have to ask is, on the basis of that record, did Leonata lie to somebody who was engaged in an investigation? I think when you put it that way, the answer is clear. I give you 3 reasons why the verdict needs to be not guilty. First, the statute doesn't apply at all. Both Professor Meyler and I read you the statute. It has to be a lie to somebody who has executive, legislative, or judicial authority. And so I challenge Professor Meyler, where does it say that Don Pedro has executive, legislative, or judicial authority? She says 2 things. First, he had just come back from war. That's true, and he was a war hero. But that didn't mean he had executive, legislative, or judicial power with regard to Messina, the island off the coast of Sicily. he was there to celebrate and be celebrated, but not to investigate. And second, she says, it was recognized that he had authority. What was the recognition? That he was a prince in Messina. But as I said to you, the fact that he was a prince doesn't mean that he had executive, legislative, or judicial authority in Messina. As I said, think of Prince Harry, Prince William. We might respect them, but that doesn't mean they have executive, legislative, or judicial authority. There is nothing in this play that indicates that, in this instance, Don Pedro had that kind of power. Statute doesn't apply. You have to find not guilty. But I give a second reason, and I said, even if the statute applies, its requirements aren't met. In order for the statement to be material, it has to be somebody who has decision-making authority. Indeed, Professor Meyler and I both read you quotes from the Supreme Court that says it has to be somebody with decision-making authority. Her response is, well, it could be about a decision to initiate an investigation. But is there anything in the play, even a word that indicates that Don Pedro had the authority to initiate an investigation? Is there even a word in the play that indicates that he had decision-making authority? He was there as a friend. He heard the lies as a friend might, but he didn't hear them as somebody with power to investigate, to initiate a prosecution, or in any way function as a government official. Unless Professor Meyler could show you that he had decision-making authority, and the lie was to influence it, and it isn't, you have to find not guilty. But I make a third argument for you, and I said that even if the statute were to apply, and even if its requirements were met, you should find that this is speech protected by the First Amendment. Quite importantly, I quote you from New York Times versus Sullivan and United States versus Alvarez that say that there's no exception to the First Amendment for false speech. And here Professor Meyler says that Section 1001 is an exception to the First Amendment. But the Supreme Court's never said that's a categorical exception to the First Amendment. It can't be that every lie is outside the scope of the First Amendment, given what the court said in New York Times versus Sullivan and United States versus Alvarez. Think of the Stolen Valor Act, which the Supreme Court declared unconstitutional as violating the First Amendment. The question that you have to ask, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is, should this be speech that's protected by the First Amendment? Is this a lie that we should find to be morally culpable? Or is this the kind of white lie or morally justified lie? And I explained why in these circumstances, the lie was justified. It very much led to the desirable result, the marriage of Claudia and Hero. It led to the clearing of Hero's name from the scurriest rumor about her. And that therefore it is speech that we should want to protect under the First Amendment. Shakespeare was right in his title for this play. I am sure you will conclude that this prosecution is much ado about nothing, and the verdict should be not guilty.
Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, in that other court in my life, I never got to say this, but let's give both counsel a round of applause. And I give you a round of applause because it all rests on you, the jury. We have heard the facts in this case beautifully presented by the actors on some key moments, and I guess from Dean Chemerinsky's reference to the record that he kept holding around. So we've heard some facts, we heard some laws by both counsel, and now we turn that over to you for you to decide. The jury, as we've said a few times, is all of you who have joined us here today, and for those who have joined us concerning via streaming. You all now have the weighty decision presented to you. So let me give you the instructions. For those of you joining us, there it is. For those of you joining us via streaming, you can now vote via the link sent to your email at the beginning of this event or by scanning the QR code on the projection screen. For those of you who join us in person, You will vote by raising your hand, and the ushers in the room will help tabulate the votes. You'll need to raise your hand and keep it raised until each section has been counted. Do not vote virtually if you are with us here in the court. And now we will review the charge. Leonata is charged with the following crime. Leonata is guilty or not guilty of making a false statement in a manner within the jurisdiction of the federal government in violation of 18 U.S.C. Section 1001. All right. So, we proceed to the vote. Is Leonata guilty or not guilty of making a false statement in a manner within the jurisdiction of the federal government in violation of that 18 U.S.C. Section 1001? You can cast your vote now. All who think a guilty verdict is appropriate, please raise your hand now. And those joining us virtually, go ahead and cast your vote now. Keep your hands up as we count. Once all the ushers confirm that they've counted their sections, you may relax. So, all in favor of guilty, raise your hand. Counters count. Are we okay, or do we need house lights?
I think we need some house lights, and we're also going to play some inspirational music for our Much Ado About Nothing production. This music is by Sarah Hull. It's called Black River. It's one of the songs we're using to motivate and inspire our live bluegrass and country band that will be playing in our production. So we're going to play this music while we count our votes.
All right, so are we counting the hands up for a guilty verdict? And the counters will let me know they've got their count. You do have a count? Okay. All right, and so now let's move to raise your hand if you believe a not guilty verdict is proper.
Wow.
Close your eyes, Dean.
I think we can stop counting.
And you're willing to do that, even though he gave you a spoiler in the middle of his speech. It ends happy. Okay. All right. I will say, Miss Lupton, Bailiff Lupton, do you all have a verdict?
Well, I think we're not adding them up.
It seems to be...
Do we want to add? Okay, I think we are going to officially tabulate the votes. So...
We are going to tab. Okay, we're going to count all the not guilties.
We need to make it official. We can play the music now.
Virtual vote.
And for a while I tried pleasing you, but now I'm left with no good reason.
right. Bailiff Lupton, do we have the count? Thank you. Let me just say, arts versus the law, and who is the winner? The winner is you. I hope to see you all at the old Swan come this summer. This play will change your life. And now, the defendant will please stand. I see you brought your preacher along. I want her to stand too. I think y'all should be saying some sweet prayers for this result. Very sweet prayers for this result. The verdict is guilty. 56 people don't like y'all, but 236 do. So you ain't going to the slammer today? Thank you all, and this court ain't in session no more. And with that, we bid you well, and we'll see you at the Swan.
Let's not play music so people get the